Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new edition of your program, Global Economy. In this edition, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the mega projects and a conference that was held in Riyadh this morning. It started actually this morning and will continue for the next 2 days. We are honored to be joined by Mr. Edmund Osborns. He's the chairman of Mead Events. Also joined by Mr. Yassin Al Suroor, keynote speaker of the conference and a president and CEO of Amal Group. On your behalf, let's welcome both of them. Welcome to the program, Mr.
Lovely to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Suroor, to the program. Let me ask you, Mr. Edmund, at the beginning of the program, just to give us our viewers an idea, was it the first time this conference being held?
Yes.
And what this conference all about?
Well, the Mead has been going for more than 50 years, and our activity, what we do is we help people to do business in and with the Middle East. And one of the big areas that we help people in is in delivering major projects. And there is an enormous boom in the projects and construction industry in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the largest projects and construction industry in the Middle East by a very wide margin. And because of the very ambitious capital investment plans from the Saudi Arabian government and the private sector, the project sector here in Saudi Arabia is reaching a boom, and it's going to be booming for the next 5 years. Now that is good news. The challenge is having the capacity not only to do projects which are more numerous and larger than ever done before, but also more complex. And today, which is the first day of our 3-day conference, today we were looking at the railway side of the story. And railway projects are absolutely amongst the most complex projects you can do for a variety of different reasons. So the conference itself is there to help people from Saudi Arabia, business people, companies, and from their regional international partners to understand the market, address the opportunities, and also rise to the challenges that are coming inside a very large scale. And it is the first time we've done this conference in Riyadh. We've done other conferences here, but this is the first one we've specifically done on mega projects, and we're very pleased to be working with our friends and partners in Saudi Arabia on this project.
And let's talk about the audience. Who is your target audience, and did you succeed to attract them? How did you find the turnout of the membership?
Well, Yassin is part of our audience.
This is a sample.
A very successful Saudi Arabian businessman.
Thank you.
He's got a strong interest in the project sector. So the audience, on the one hand, obviously the major clients, the people who are spending money on major capital projects. The largest clients here in Saudi Arabia tend to be government agencies like Saudi Aramco. Today, the Saudi Arabian Railway Company was a big focus of our interest, but also the private sector clients. Then we look at the other side, the people who are supplying the services, and Saudi Arabia, of course, there's some very celebrated, very large-scale, very successful construction companies. We're addressing them. And then there's a whole range of subcontractors who support the large contractors, and then people provide materials, cement, reinforcing steel, all the material, then the building equipment, and then of course really important the services, which is mainly the engineering and project management services. So today we had a very good audience, I thought.
Excellent.
It was about 100 people I think we had, and this is the pre-conference day. And it wasn't just that we had a good number, it's just the quality of the people we had was really, really high. Very serious people who've been very successful working on very major and complex projects, sitting here together, learning off each other, sharing information. Because the challenge here in Saudi Arabia is one that cannot be addressed by one group alone. It's going to take Saudi Arabian clients, Saudi Arabian government, the private sector, Saudi Arabian construction and project companies of all types, working with their regional and international partners in delivering fabulous projects that's going to transform the Saudi Arabian economy over the next 25 years.
Mr. Suroor, Mr. Yassin, if you gave a speech
Tomorrow.
today, or tomorrow you'll be giving a speech, can you maybe brief us for the people who will be unfortunate maybe to attend?
Yes, don't give too much away, you see.
Well, first of all, I think the conference went well, and the objective of the conference I mean, today the organizers, they did a really good job. They bring international key speakers and local key speakers to achieve the objective of the market, whereby to tell them what's really the upcoming projects, especially the mega projects in the market. So our topics mainly, in every conference you see a lot of presentation on mega projects, but we are very specialized in our keynote. It's about mainly the success and the key stories on the past projects and the best optimization and doing the project in Saudi Arabia, the challenge of the projects here in the market. As you know that each market there is a culture of doing business. So we try to talk about the positive and negative point of view for each project. So we hope, tomorrow that we're going to address every issues. We believe that there is really a lot of mega projects in the pipeline. There is a huge challenge, as you know, in every project. And for every client, they have always two objectives. Objective number one, the project have to be on budget. Objective number two, that the project have to be on time. So budget is not really an issue, but on time, that's the major issues, as my colleagues here may mention.
Well, I would put objective number three, the projects work.
The project work, yes.
So that they actually add value. Now today, for example, we were talking about the Saudi Arabian rail expansion program. I don't think many people know. The Saudi Arabia has got plans to build around 5,000 kilometers of railway. So for those who try to imagine the distance, it's from Portugal all the way to Moscow and more. So it's one of the great railway lines projects ever attempted, and these comprise a number of different projects. Now, these projects are more than just railways. They're not just railways. They are actually part of a huge initiative by the Saudi Arabia to transform the economy. And one of the first parts of the new program, of course, is the North-South Mineral Railway line, which is now complete, which will soon be officially opened. It's more than 1,000 kilometers have been created. It goes right up to the Jordanian border and then connects phosphate and bauxite mines with Ras Al Khair, which is a new industrial city on the Gulf Coast. Now, this project it's a railway line, and it's about moving freight around, but more than that, it means it's opening up a new industrial sector for Saudi Arabia, which is the mineral sector, particularly in the phosphates and the bauxite, which is aluminium. So it's transformational. Now, on top of that, the next part's been finished off with the line that goes to Riyadh, which will have a passenger component, and the extension from Ras Al Khair to Dammam. And then we have, of course, the project that's being worked on now for the holy cities, the holy places in the Western Province, the Saudi Land Bridge. These are
Riyadh Metro.
And then you've got the urban railways.
Yes.
All of them are very, very difficult projects to do, and they take a decade from conceptualization, at least a decade, to start of operations. And you're quite right, the budget is critical. You don't want to overspend on a project, you want to deliver it on time, but more than anything else, you want these projects to deliver value to the economy.
Yes.
Yeah, so that these projects really work.
Absolutely. Now, in your conference, I understand that you have each day you will have a theme, like railroads and some other energy, I guess, projects. But what are the main issues that you're going to discuss in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? We do have serious challenges to projects. For example, the failing of contractors and fulfilling their contracts and ultimately failing to finish the project, that we have to wait for several years to have another contractor. Will you discuss those issues and the tender issues?
I think the issue is, there was a recognition right across in Saudi Arabian government and the private sector, from the client side and the supplier side, that the scale of the construction boom that's taking place in Saudi Arabia right across the kingdom is unprecedented, it's unique, and it's putting unprecedented demands on everybody involved with the supply chain. The people who don't know the projects industry don't think, oh, it's not a supply chain, because people think supply chain is like car manufacturing, where you build, you get material, assemble it. Projects are actually a manufacturing process, and they take place over time and over space as well. So you have to bring in the people and materials. You have to get them in the right place at the right time. Of course, you have to have all the engineering work and planning done. Then it is an extraordinarily complicated thing to do, and it's therefore not really surprising that the Saudi Arabian projects industry at this stage maybe doesn't have everything it needs to do what needs to be done. So we're going to be looking at each point. So if you look at the supply chain, you start off with the clients, their planning process, the viability, the studies they have to do. Then you do the design part, which is engineers and architects get involved. It's extremely time consuming. And then you get the tendering process, which is a amazingly sensitive thing, because of course you're not just judging price, you're also judging technique. And then you've got the construction process itself, which can take up to 5 or 6 years on a major project. And after that, if you financed it, you've got to operate the project. And one of the great untested challenges here in Saudi Arabia, well, it's not untested, it's used in some sectors, is the idea that the people who build a project also have a responsibility for running that project and operating that project afterwards, which is a concept of private finance initiative, or build, own, operate, various forms, so that you actually get efficiency in the operation of the project after it. These are extremely complicated challenges at each stage, and I like to feel that this conference is our small contribution to helping Saudi Arabia address that question.
Okay.
So I was answering.
Suroor, from a businessman point of view, there's many actually many
Challenge.
media coverage of and also the anti-corruption association Nazaha have been handling such issues with regard to failing of projects, wasted of not only money but time and effort.
I think the issue here starts from the day one, when you start really to prepare your RFP. Okay, there's a lot of issue. There's a lot of challenge, not only issue. If you look at every project from the stage one always you go through the consultants. The consultants start to prepare the design, then they come up with the RFP, and they start to qualify the bidders. So, number one, each ministry or each client, regardless is a government, semi-government, or a private sector, but we are talking about the mega project. Let us look at a government and semi-government project. Number one, that you have to have a very strong PMO in-house, which is a project management office in-house. What's that mean? That you need to have a very strong resource. So you have to train your resource to be very qualified. There are some projects that the project management people within the client themselves, even though they are not educated, so you have to invest on education, you have to invest on training, you have to...
Project management...
Let him finish his point. I'll come back to you, Mr.
I was just to qualify the project.
But just let him finish his point, I'll come back.
So training is very important. That's number one. We should not look at a fast-track project. We should look at a quality of projects. With regard to the failures, as you mentioned earlier, I agree with you. There was a write-up by one of the economics person who is expert on projects. He says 6% of projects deliver on time.
6%
only 6%. So this means that there is a huge failure.
Serious issue.
So yes, most of the mega projects we depend on international players, okay? But the issue here is not in the international. When you go down the road to the subcontractors, so you have to create enforcement law. Enforcement law that even though your subcontractor have to follow the policy of the client with regard to the specification, with regard to the quality. That's number one. Number two, you have to look at the market. What the market benefit from that? Okay? I'm looking to two objectives when I say benefit. Number one, I would like to see the Saudis to be trained properly. I would like to see the Saudi that they are handling our projects. I would like to see the Saudi, they are very strong project management. So I'm not going to depend all my life cycle on foreigner or expatriate companies. So the client have to put enforcement law to the EPC contractor, to the engineering, that part of the engineering have to be in kingdom, like what Aramco did recently. They create a new concept which they call it in kingdom. That's number one. Number two, there is a lot of mega projects you see in the market that the market is not benefit. Believe it or not, there are some projects that the main client he will outsource everything from international market. The local market will not benefit anything from that. So I always say that enforcement law is very important in everything. So we have a lot of
And monitoring is
very important. I mean, okay, when I go back to the enforcement law, today there's a failure on one project, but next day he's qualified in other project. That's not right. You have to monitor. If he's disqualified or there is a delay on the project, why I qualify the same company in X,
should
Y, Z?
be serious fines and punishments.
Punishments, it should be publicity and then use like other country. I was traveling one of the trip, I was attending a conference and they took us for a road show. I was surprised the country that we visit, without I mention the name, they have a ministry, it's called PMC, a ministry just for project management. They manage all the governmental projects. So
we used to have it actually, the general works.
Well, I don't have answer for that.
Yeah, okay, we used to, but they unfortunately...
The public works.
But maybe, the public
yes.
works, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to comment on his...
Well, no, I mean, all I was saying on the project management is project managers tend to be engineers. That's people who are qualified in civil engineering and other building skills. But it goes beyond that. It's a manager.
Commissioning.
You're actually like a manager of a factory. So it requires a high level of technical skill, but also the ability to coordinate, as a good manager can, lots of different things happening at the same time.
Planning.
And dealing with things when they go wrong.
Yeah.
And being able to respond. That is a very high quality skill. And I think throughout the world there's a shortage of high quality project managers. And you need project managers when the project is particularly complex as well. When the project might be divided into several parts, all happening simultaneously. So someone has to try and make sure that all these different elements are coming together. Very struck by your point about the regulation of the issue. Do you think there needs to be new law, new regulations?
But before we get to this, we're going to watch, we have a report about the conference. We're going to watch it and we'll be back. Stay with us. You have been watching your program, Global Economy.
Looking at the events, there is really great participation from the international and the local company in Saudi Arabia. There's many topics being touched base with regard to the infrastructure project, the challenge in Saudi Arabia. What I really appreciate about the conference, I saw a lot of international players that looking at the Saudi Arabian market. That showed that the Saudi Arabia market, there is a lot of demand, there is a lot of infrastructure booming in the market. Also, there is a challenge like any other market. So we're going to discuss in the coming 2 days the challenge on the upcoming projects, especially the mega projects. We try to address many issues related to the projects. We try to from facilitating, from government point of view, from the private point of view. As everybody knows that there is a huge challenge with regard to the localization, with regard to the short of subcontractors, with regard to the resource, there is short of resource. So I hope by the end of the day and the conference that we will address this issue, we'll come up with the solutions. And as everybody knows, in this conference or this event or like any other events, people should really work together. And it's mainly really to build a network among the local and the international players. One of the things that I was really looking forward to see more of local Saudi contractors, which I did not really see much of them. Maybe due to they are busy in different projects, but I would love really to see more of participation from the Saudi contractors. I would like to see really, we have a vision to grow, and grow is a challenge. We should not really depend on only international foreigner players. We should build our capability, build our resource, build our engineering back office. So I wish for the best for everybody, and it's a challenge.
And of course, sir, we thank you so much for your time and wish you all the best, and thank you so much.
Welcome back. You have been watching your program, Global Economy. Now, Mr. Edmund, you want to comment before the break?
Well, I think the main purpose of the conference, and it goes on for another 2 days in the Marriott Hotel. We've got some excellent speakers, including Yassin. The main is to constructively address the challenges and what we as a MEAD and with our partners can do to help Saudi Arabia address those issues. And there are so many things that can be done. We're very confident we come with some very constructive suggestions. But one of the most important, of course, is training Saudi Arabians to work in the project sector and also to work on the operation and maintenance of projects. And I think that's particularly true of the railways. The need for railway engineers, people who can design and project manage railways, is going to be very substantial over the next 10 years. Needs to be more people coming out of universities with skills in that sector. And once you've done that, there's going to be between 50 to 100,000 people required to run the railways after that, and that will be a lifetime career. And again, this is a great opportunity for young Saudi Arabians, and the educational system needs to adjust to produce people who can do these jobs, and I'm very positive that they will.
Interesting. Now, Mr. Yassin, I wanted to point out with regard to the issue of classifying contractors in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. There's an issue with that. Who you think should be handling this particular evaluation for contractors? Should it be the Chamber of Commerce? Should it be the Ministry of Commerce?
Well, if you ask me personally, my personal opinion should be new identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
In which form?
It should
like
be
public
should be identity
works?
that run by people from the project side. As you know, that this is really a major issue. It's not only for the local contractors, it's mainly for the foreigner contractors. Most of the projects, the government projects, have to be classified. So you see, this is one of the issues when you mentioned earlier that there is a delay and there is non-quality delivery of projects, because today, when there is a foreigner company, contractors, he needs to bid for governmental projects, and he's not classified as A, what he gonna do? He have to go through a local company. So some projects that you will find that local contractor, he's there only by name, not by delivery. So answering to your question, I think it should be new identity run by really very high qualified people, as you mentioned. I mean, very well graduated. That's why we can build our Saudi Asian program.
Very good. Very interesting suggestion.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, because I think maybe there needs to be a new body that's
I hope
looking.
nobody will be angry with me after the conference, after the...
No, but I think there needs to be new institutions, because what you're talking here is unprecedented. The challenge for the economy and the project sector is unprecedented, and there needs, I think, greater coordination and higher, just generally encouragement of higher standards. So I think the suggestion that Yasin's made is a really good one.
Today, if you allowed me just to add
Sure.
one thing, what I like about the conference, I mean, today, especially the speakers, that I find out that most of them, they have really an objective. And this objective, as you mentioned earlier, most of the project goes for construction, let us say 3 years, then you go for operation for a couple of years. Some project you can go for operation for 10 years. So what I like about them, they was talking about more of really training the Saudis. I mean, we will not be in your country for too long,
Yes.
okay? And you know, any international company, they keep moving according to any international market. So we have to look at really train the Saudis. That's the future of the market. This is only hope. This is an objective, but they have to create enforcement law also for that. Even though when you localize the Saudis, you don't localize only for any job. You have to localize a quality job. We need those people to run the future project.
Okay. Now, Mr. Edmund, let's talk about the Western experience in building a project and executing a project. Why there is a few issues there and lots of issues within the developing countries, so to speak?
Well, I mean, if you look at, I mean, I'm not sure that the West is going to teach anybody. People have been, the first houses in the world were built in this part of the world.
Right.
I mean, some of the greatest buildings ever erected have been built in this part of the world. So there was a lot of the original engineering and construction industries came from the Gulf and the Middle East region. I think the West, however's experience in doing very complicated projects with high technology and doing them to schedule, I think there's a lot of knowledge that can be transferred to the region. And I think, I mean, take for example London Olympics, which actually was, the whole thing was a project. It had some physical components, it had some software components, but the delivery of that very, very complicated program, which also, well, and this is a real challenge, is actually to do new projects in an existing built-up area. And that's one of the things that anybody doing the urban railway in Saudi Arabia is having to tackle. We heard the reference to the first metro, and that was in Mecca. This is an ancient city. To build a new project there which facilitates movement of people without destroying a culture is a very difficult thing to do, and I think that skill is going to become more and more important. I think a certain amount of Western experience is very valuable in how educating people about how to tackle that. But you always need, with any construction industry, at every level, you've got to have the local composition.
Okay.
You have to have the local engagement,
Yes.
because otherwise the project won't work.
I'll come back to you, but I think we have Mr. Faisal Fadl on the phone. Mr. Faisal, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me.
Okay, Mr. Faisal, tomorrow you going to start your conference. Can you give us your overview as of the participants, and also how is this conference viewed here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, especially in a time where the economy is booming and we have many constructions and many mega projects that of course are being built around the kingdom?
Of course, I will be happy, and thank you first for having me. And with no doubt, infrastructure projects has a great amount of impact, not only to itself, but also to the growth of the urban development throughout, because it really does affect the distribution of transportation, movement of people, city to city, and within also the city. So, but I have to tell you that tomorrow we have a fantastic program, and we have a lot of things lined up. And what's really interesting about this delegates is that most of them really mix from different industry within the construction industry, such as we've got the lawyers, we've got the people who have more experience with contracting, we got other people also in design sector, and we have more experts in theories and things to implement and make projects.
Interesting. Now, what the tomorrow theme going to be for the conference?
Well, I think we have a big program as usual. Definitely today it was more focused on railway, but tomorrow hopefully we'll focus into more infrastructure, more utilities, more into engineering. Maybe some speakers. We've got some panel discussions on different topics. I think eventually also for after tomorrow, which is we have the coincides with the World Green Building Week, which is, as you know, it's a community at large of maybe more than 90 countries that they try to, for big projects, they try to reduce the amount of footprint on projects, for which that will reduces the carbon emissions and improve efficiency in projects and actually sustainability issues, which is a really big thing. Today, we're not only in big projects and mega projects, we're concerning about cost and time and so on, but also we're more looking into more competitive markets such as environment, valuability, and efficiency and long term. And what really strikes me today is that we had a really specific information from one of the speakers on how is it valuable to just only to use different type of tracks for railways, because some of them are more maintenance-free than others. And I think Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as one of the speakers was saying, that actually have chosen railways that are actually more high advanced than even Europe. And I have to tell you, in railways, today we have learned that there is about 15 billion coming out of Meet Insight, obviously, is that there is a $15 billion spending for the next 3 years, which puts Saudi Arabia up front in all GCC. I think Kuwait and Emirates right after it. And maybe Oman is the lowest, maybe $2 billion. But no doubt the whole region is moving into high efficient transportations, and infrastructure will be definitely the way to go to have a glamorous regional cities, as you say.
Mr. Faisal, thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you good success for your conference. We're going to watch another report, dear viewers. We will be back. Stay with us. You have been watching your program, Global Economy. Economy, and we are joined by Mr. Yassin Al Suroor, President and CEO of the Al-A'mal Group, and also we just joined by another interesting person, Mr. Richard Thompson. He is editor on Mead Event Company. Mr. Richard, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So you are basically in charge of the content of the conferences that you organize usually?
I'm responsible for all of the content across Mead's businesses, including conferences. So the speakers that we have on stage, the themes.
Can you maybe talk to us about this conference, the mega project conference?
Yes, I mean there are two primary aims when we do these conferences. One is to share information, to inform people about plans, and the other is to bring people together, networking, to bring the client agencies, the government agencies together with the contractors, the consultants, the engineers. So in this conference we wanted to focus on Saudi Arabian infrastructure. There is something like $300 billion worth of infrastructure projects planned in the next decade. That is a lot of work, a lot of technical expertise needs to come together, a lot of people need to come together. So we looked at the major themes within that $300 billion, healthcare, education, transportation, as we've heard already, utilities, and social infrastructure, etc. And we've looked for people who are involved in commissioning that work, in planning that work, and in delivering that work, and then once the infrastructure is built, in operating those facilities.
Interesting. Now, how you go about selecting the speakers?
We have a lot of information in this area, so we know many of the key people within government ministries, within government agencies, and within the private sector, in the companies who actually do the design and the construction, etc. So we do a lot of meetings, a lot of planning. We try to take recommendations from people in the market who understand what's going on, who know who the influential characters are, and the knowledgeable people. And we try and plan around their diaries, when the best time to have these events are, and sort everything out so we can have the same people in the same room at the same time.
Interesting. Now, Mr. Al Suroor, let's go back to projects. As a Saudi contractor, what are let's say, the things you'd like to see in the, especially that most of the contracts are granted by the government? So what things do you like to see from the governmental side, from ministries and from the bidding departments? What are some of the obstacles you think that could be tackled and addressed?
As I mentioned earlier, I mean from government point of view or from semi-government, they have always two objectives. I mean, project on budget, project on time. So what we are really expecting, number one, that each client, regardless government, semi-government, they need really to set up a proper PMO, project management setup within the ministry or within the authority itself to really manage the project in a proper way. That's number one. Number two, that the qualification process have to be really more developed, they have to come up with little enforcement law on the contractors, whereby that any contractor that he don't deliver on time, they have to be, as we mentioned earlier, they have to be a penalty, they have to be a punishment. So we make sure that all our projects in the market that really deliver on time. That's number one. Number two, we look forward really to have more facilitate, especially from the Ministry of Labours. As you know, and everybody know, I think it's a concern today in the conference that about the visa issues. I mean, today you find the companies with billions of projects, but they're not getting the right quota. And even though by getting this...
You mean laborers?
Yeah, by getting the quota...
We have some challenges with Saudiization. We think you as a businessman, you're not serious about this.
Well, I mean...
Not you personally, but business community.
Well, well, that's the reason I mentioned enforcement law. Yeah, because what you mentioned, I agree with you.
Work both ways.
It have to be enforcement law from the government point of view, from the client point of view. It's not only the private sector. I'm not in agreement as of today with regard to the quota of the Saudiation to say at 10%. No, I would like to have 10% with equality.
Absolutely.
And even though that, if you cannot maintain the 10%, but I would like you to train or to contribute to the training of the people.
Who you mean?
I mean the private sector.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
If you cannot hire today, there have to be a law whereby that if the local contractor cannot hire, they have to educate at least 10% of those people, because the end of the day, you need to have trained people. I don't think so that for any Saudis, especially, that he would like to see the Saudis are doing the normal job of the others. I would like to see Saudis that they are driving the project in the future. So a quality of job. The other things that we would like really to see with regard, when we mentioned the enforcement law, we would like to see more of local components. I mean, if you go to some of other countries, you find that in every contract there is a condition whereby that certain percentage you have to use a local resource, local materials. So you have to benefit to the market. It's not only doing the project, then you exit and you go back, that and the market will not benefit from that. So we'd love really to see all this one to be implemented. The last, of course, objective or last wish that we'd like to see really, we don't look at only fast track project. We like to look at really quality of project down the road.
Interesting.
If I could add a point on that, I think I mean, this is an enormous opportunity for the Kingdom to install infrastructure, to create, to lay the foundations for the future. But it's also an enormous challenge. This has to be delivered quickly, and the challenges of creating jobs, long-term sustainable jobs for local people, absolutely central to it. For me, one of the problems that we face, and it's not just in Saudi Arabia but in many other countries, is the culture of going for the lowest price on all these projects, which means you have a client, say a government ministry or something like that, and they are required to get the cheapest price for its best value for the country. But that means you then have contractors submitting the lowest bid to win the contract, and they cut corners and they have to hit an impossible deadline. If we can look at new ways of delivering projects so that the client is working with the supply chain in advance of the procurement process, you can plan in things like Saudization.
There is an issue, actually. There is a sort of a debate that some of the projects are exaggerated in the cost. And there is this issue of getting the less or the cheapest price that is being offered to the bidding will be granted the contract. So it is an issue, dilemma, actually.
You're absolutely right. It's a dilemma, and I'm not offering solutions. But in terms of the issues of Saudization and
Mr.
creating...
Yassin said is monitoring and reinforcement is important in either case.
If you allowed me,
But before we allow Mr. Yassin, we have the last report. We're going to watch it and we'll be back. Stay with us and I'll give you the last point, Mr. Yassin. Let's watch our last report of the show. About 1 minute remaining in the program. Mr. Yassin, you got the last word before we come to the end of the show.
Yeah, the last message I would like to really highlight is, as my colleagues here mentioned, with regard to the process of the bid. I think they have to be really little some change on the process whereby that the technical evaluation has to take more place, economic more than the commercial proposal.
Yes. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of the anything you want to say before we conclude?
I can only really endorse what has been said already. This is a unique, unprecedented opportunity for the kingdom. There are many challenges, but with the talent...
There's many opportunities, actually.
There's many opportunities. The market is great for everybody.
Definitely. Okay, thank you all very much for joining us. We thank you, Mr. Yassin Al Suroor, a Saudi businessman. We also would like to thank Mr. Richard Thompson, editor of Mead, and also we were joined by Mr. Edmund Oselbian, the CEO of Mead, which is an event management company. Thank you all very much for joining us in this edition of your program, Global Economy. I'd like also to thank the director of the program, Mr. Bashir, producers Adwa Saad and Sultan Thiyat. To meet again next week. Have a good and a pleasant evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.